right, I want to bring in CTV's U.S. political analyst Eric Ham now with more. Good morning to you, Eric. Good to see you. So let's begin with Donald Trump's comments on Air Force One last night, suggesting that the U.S. will be running Venezuela. That contradicted what we heard earlier in the day from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. So where do things stand with who's in charge in Venezuela?
I think what we're seeing here is the administration doesn't have a plan in terms of what the next steps are, in fact, who will be running the country, and more importantly, how long is the United States expected to stay there. We also heard from the Secretary of State Marco Rubio that this was a law enforcement operation, yet the United States, at least based on what Donald Trump is saying, will actually be running the country, which makes clear that this is no longer about law enforcement. However, if it is, based on the fact that we're talking about the leader of a sovereign nation, it would seem as though when he appears in court, a judge should, in fact, throw this out, simply given the fact that you have a leader that was actually kidnapped from his own country and is now facing U.S. charges. So I think much of this right now is uncharted territory in terms of the legality, but more importantly, what this means for international relations and, in fact, if the United States does have any authority to actually be in Venezuela, particularly running its oil fields. All
right, I want to get back to Trump's comments in just a second, because it certainly doesn't sound like things stop with Venezuela. But let's, before we get to that, talk about Maduro's first court appearance today. He was transferred early this morning from Brooklyn to New York. He is going to stand trial in the U.S. What are you watching for? What are you expecting from this first court appearance today? And who are his lawyers? Do we know?
That's a really good question. We don't know if he will have court-appointed attorneys or if he has his own lawyers that will be representing him, or if Venezuela itself will actually be sending representation for the deposed president. But however, I think the judge is going to have to make a ruling on whether or not these charges can actually stand, because at their face, it just doesn't appear as though what the United States actually did was legal. I think what we're seeing, at least from the White House and from the Secretary of State, they are trying to find a way to make this legal, to be able to at least make this get to a courtroom. But right now, it's still, I think, unclear.
Okay, so as we mentioned and as we heard from Trump last night, it doesn't sound like Venezuela is the only country that he has in his sights. I want to play for you and for everyone what he had to say about Greenland this weekend. Let's play that sound.
We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
I think it's a big one.
You know what Denmark did recently to boost up security in Greenland? They added one more dog sled.
All right, so Eric, just interesting to note Lindsey Graham seeming to be nodding in agreement there with the president as he was saying that America needed Greenland. Greenland rejected Trump's comments once again over the weekend. So where does it stop? There are now global concerns about Trump's ambitions.
Look, Venezuela was the blueprint. The president actually went in, kidnapped a sovereign leader, and did it with very little outcry from the international community. We already know that the Pentagon has been drawing up plans for a military takeover of Greenland. The president, in addition, has said he would take Canada by economic force. Given the fact that he now has his hands on the largest oil reserves in the world, and we know that Canada refines oil very similar to Venezuela, I think that does now take a lot of leverage away from Canada, which means I think Donald Trump his plan for economic takeover of Canada is coming into clearer picture. As we look at Greenland, however, I think given what we saw play out in Venezuela, the president is now more emboldened and not less to actually follow through with a military takeover, because we haven't heard much from the international community, and I doubt even NATO allies would actually push back if, in fact, that's what the Trump administration decided to do.
Eric Ham is CTV News U.S. political analyst. Eric, thank you so much.